Okay, it's working. So now we are
I
live.
can hear you, Anthony.
I will ask you to all mute your microphone while Joanna
Can
is
you
presenting
hear us?
the webinar.
Okay, it's working.
So now we are
I
live.
can hear you, Anthony.
Do the questions.
I will
Sorry
ask
about
you to
the
all
technical
mute your
issue.
microphone while Joanna
Can
is
you hear
presenting
us?
the
Okay,
webinar.
it's working.
So now we are
I
live.
can hear you, Anthony.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. Apologies for the delay this morning. Hopefully we will get going and get through this quickly as soon as possible. I'm here today, obviously, with other members of the SCIFI consortium. My name is Joanna Walker. I work for the University of Southampton, who are a partner in the consortium, along with the City of Delft, and we have Hester Torn and Fons here today. They will be able to answer any questions specifically about challenges regarding Delft. Mechelen is the lead partner in SCIFI, and we have Dimitri van Balen here as well. At the end, when I've talked about the kind of generic information about applying for SCIFI, you will have the opportunity to ask all these people any specific questions about their challenges. From Brugge, we have a whole range of experts on their challenges, along with Evelyn, who is leading on their side. And we also have other representatives of SCIFI here today if you have any questions, which again, you'll be welcome to ask at the end. So the other partners along with those cities, Saint-Quentin is our final city, Faubourg Numérique, Cambridge Clean Tech, which of course you're familiar with because Anthony just spoke, and Agoria. So the purpose of this call today is to discuss the application for the challenges that will lead to an accelerator for mid-sized cities and SMEs, businesses, to co-create practical, sustainable solutions for city challenges based on the use of open and shared data. It's funded by Interreg 2Cs, and this is the second of two calls. So we have the first challenges have already been addressed, and there will be, in fullness of time, hopefully quite soon, we will also be able to see the results of that, and so share that with you for more information. So we're really in the last month, the last 3 weeks of this call being open. It's been open from July the 1st. We've had 9 separate smart city challenges. There's an online application. It's through F6S, which I know many of you will already be familiar with. There is the application form, which you can see online, so you have a good opportunity to understand think about what you'd like to write in there before you actually fill it in. We also show you what we're looking for, and so all the application forms, when the closing date of October 1st comes around, all the application forms are reviewed by multiple reviewers, and from this we shortlist the companies that we want to interview for further information, and that interview is remote. It takes place with representatives of the appropriate city that is hosting the challenge, and also business and technical experts. The experimentation period, that's the acceleration period, is for 6 months, and we, as well as the support from the cities and addressing the challenges and the possibility to develop new products, there is up to €10,000 of financing to develop the product or service, the minimum viable product, the proof of concept, whatever is being worked on during that period. So now we come to the challenges. I'm going to go through them all quickly, and so if we could save any questions about specific challenges to the end. I know that if you have any questions specifically about the Brugge mobility challenge, we would need to take those questions first for availability of our expert. So the challenges, the 9 challenges altogether, we have one addressing sustainable commuting to industrial areas, another on understanding housing stock and the impact of mobility on housing markets, optimizing pedestrian flow through open data, improving access to shared and sustainable transport for excluded groups, so those are groups living in more deprived areas and the elderly, developing sustainable multimodal transport for short journeys, that's of 7 kilometres and less. Improving bicycle flows through the city, improving access and parking within the city, improving cleanliness facilities, so a waste management challenge there, and optimising the movement of local authority vehicles, which again would start with waste management vehicles, but the idea would be to develop something that could address a wider range of vehicles. So the open call process, as you can see from this, the first 6 months of this has been done. That's while we, the cities and the consortia partners, we consulted citizens, we consulted experts, we consulted the governments, the local governments, to decide what the most important challenges were that we felt could be addressed with data, that we had sufficient data available for. The challenges are now open for the 3-month period. From the 1st of October, when the challenges close, we will have a 3-month selection period. And as I've already mentioned, that first has a review process of your application forms, then remote interviews for the shortlisted companies. Though we also in this period will obviously necessarily do our due diligence, sign contracts with you. And those get signed directly with the city that you're working with. 6 months of experimentation in the accelerator, and then at the end of that 6 months there are opportunities to scale, to be procured by cities within SCIFI and also other cities, and we offer a lot of support in helping ensure that both your work addresses the challenges of the cities, but also there is more benefit, more about working with mid-sized cities on these kinds of challenges and have a wider potential customer base to go out to. So more on that, obviously we offer up to €10,000 to support the pilot, proof of concept or minimum viable product. There is this full solution implementation opportunity for successful pilots. This is not a guarantee, this is merely kind of the result of successfully working with the city or developing a product that other cities are interested in. It's a full co-creation experience with access to and support from the cities and the stakeholders. There's a 6-month business accelerator. We provide training, advice, mentoring, webinars, especially on issues such as GDP, data privacy, and other important key aspects of working with data. Dissemination opportunities amongst peers and cities. For instance, the cities will go to various smart city conferences and have stands at which cities, SMEs they're working with are welcome to participate. The introduction to other cities, investors and mentors, access to hardware and equipment, and of course, most importantly, access to the data. Although this is an open data project, we acknowledge that not all the important data that you might want to work with is currently open, and so we're very open to initially sharing data, which we can then open later. So the funding is specifically for prototyping your solution to a SCIFI challenge. In the budget, we can cover salaries, travels, consumables, subcontracting, and indirect expenses. We prefer that it's not entirely just the CEO's salary. It needs to show that what is being paid for is directly relevant to what's being worked on. So your overall budget, obviously for the project, can be higher, but we only finance up to 10,000 of that. And if your budget is lower than €10,000, we finance the amount you need. If you require hardware, then the city will purchase that in close contact with you, and that will remain the belongings of the city. So what are the eligibility criteria? It's really important that you go and look for more details at the guide for applicants, which is at smartcityinnovation.eu/apply. But essentially, you need to be a legal entity. So you can be a startup, student, a company, but it must be an existing legal entity. We are funding with taxpayers' money here, and we need to do our best due diligence on this. You need to be established in a current EU 28 country or in a Horizon 2020 associated country. we don't. We ask for no consortia. If you are bringing together a consortia, you then also have to be established as a single legal entity, and the company must be incorporated when we sign the contract. It means you don't necessarily need to do it now, but by the time the contract is signed in December, you do need to be incorporated. So these are obviously some things you can do next. Email us, follow us on Twitter, but I really, really want to go to individual questions about the challenges. So I'm just going to go back to that page, and I'm going to hand back over to Anthony now to moderate the questions. Feel free also to ask me any questions you want, or the cities individually, because I think he can see who's asking questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, so we've got quite a lot of questions, and Hester, Fons, and Alexander have started replying to them directly in the chat.
Oh, Alexander's here, great.
Yeah, he's in the chat, yeah. So if you have any more questions, I see a lot of questions about the parking challenge. Alexander is already asking them, answering them in the...
Okay, maybe in that case, Anthony, for the purpose of the webinar and for people who are going to watch this after, not live, you could read some of them out and then read the answers out, because I don't think it'll be so easy to capture the chats later.
Yeah. So, for example, Alexander is saying that one may parking of 84 places and some streets around this main parking. And the kind of data they have available for the parking challenge is cartography, numbers of places, and obviously they have other data available on demand. So if there's any specific need for people who want to apply to the challenge, they have more available data on demand. They need to directly see that with the city of Saint-Quentin. And if you want to talk to Alexander for any questions on the parking challenge or ashtray challenge, or the cleanliness challenge, you can send an email to Alexandre, so alexandre.chaffot, CHAFFOTTE @saint-content.fr.
I know that Bruges are limited on time, that they can answer any questions about their transport questions. Do we have any on that challenge?
I'm trying to go back to the transport questions.
So this is specifically the multimodal transport for short journeys.
So I've got a general question here from Anu Antila, asking if there's already any mobile app being widely used by the target audience of each mobility challenge. So maybe Bruges could, the mobility experts could answer that question.
Yes, hi, this is Evelyn. No, my colleague is just replying that there's no specific app already deployed here in Bruges.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? It doesn't need to be through the chat. I think I may be wrong. It does need to be through the chat.
Okay, so I've got a question for Bruce here. A dataset available soon is specific biking measures. Can you please describe what is in that dataset? Evelyn, did you get that question?
Yes, I was just talking to my colleague. Our expert is not present here, so I cannot reply to that. But I can contact you later to let you know what that would mean.
Mike Manship, and I know Mike, so we can be in contact with Mike. Another question for Bruce. J.D. Gupta is asking if you can pay for the vehicles like e-bikes, bikes, scooters, etc.
That depends on what do they mean with that? What do we have to pay for the vehicles? You mean the people that are biking or cycling? Do we need to pay their bikes, or is it something else? because I don't understand the question really good.
So, well, there's, I mean, if I can answer in a general way, there's extra budget available for material. So the city can buy extra material for the pilot. Of course, it cannot be like €1 million. But if there's any need for extra materials like sensors for a pilot or anything or any other thing for mobility, there's extra budget for that, but the city will remain owner of the material. Gary Barnett here is asking if it's possible to apply to multiple projects. So the answer is yes, you can, as long as you do one application per challenge. Dr. Kanthan is asking if, regarding multimodal transport, who owns IPR on the MVP to be delivered, especially if funded with €10,000?
Sorry, could you repeat that one, Anthony?
So, for the multimodal transport, who owns IPR on the MVP to be delivered, especially if funded with €10,000?
So the foreground IPR, i.e. what's created by the SME, by the company, remains with the company. The data, however created, remains with the city. So the company is basically then able to take the proof of concept and use it elsewhere, which would not be possible if we retained all the IPR. Does that help?
Yes. Denis de Rea, sorry for the pronunciation, has got a question for Bruges. Are there already some city bikes operational or startups with electrical steps, for example?
We don't have any electrical steps. The mayor decided that we don't allow the steps in the sharing services. We do have the blue bike system, and it's on the railway or next to the railway station. We do have those, and they will be expanded. And I saw the question from Jaideep then. So as to implement a sharing service for under 7 mile middle transport, it's not the purpose of this call to buy or to start a sharing service. So we don't have we don't have the amount of money to implement that in this project.
Is there mapping data available on where the assets are situated and therefore available for optimized pickup routing? So that's a question for Alexander Arthur. Alexander will answer you in the chat.
Hi, Lode Nullens from Bruges here. Normally the data is available on GIS, so the location and a lot of metadata will be available for the entrance.
Okay, thank you. Fons, there's a question for you here from Aparna Garg. Are you open to CCTV?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I was just thinking about it because using CCTV is a political decision. So I don't think we can actually manage such a thing in the pilot of 6 months for next year.
Okay, thanks. That's a clear answer. Is there any other questions for any challenge, especially for the multimodal transport, as the transport expert from Bruges has to leave in very shortly? Okay. Anyway, if you have any questions or anything we didn't get a chance to answer today, you can send an email to hello@smartcityinnovation.eu. Okay, Jaydeep Gupta is asking, if we were start a service with Bruges, then would Bruges be open to pay for the bikes and other vehicles for a shared service? Of course, considering that the costs are very affordable.
For us, it's not possible to answer that question because it depends on the amount of bikes, of course, and the costs. But we already did a study on sharing services, shared bike systems, and Bruges is a little bit too small to have a successful or a system that breaks and that has break even for shared bikes. So I don't think we would be inclined to allow those, say, the shared bike systems, and even less to pay for those.
Thank you. Any further question for Bruges here? Okay, I think there's no further question for Bruges here. Any question for Mechelen with the shared mobility, the access to shared mobility?
All the sustainable commuting in industrial areas.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I've got a general question on the application form here. How important is it to demonstrate interoperability of existing datasets with proposed solution for the challenges?
Well, when it comes to any part of the application form, it's a bit like one of these talent shows on TV. If you don't get through the first round, you can't possibly get to the next one. So what you've got to bear in mind is that we can only interview the companies who did really great applications and looked really good at application stage. We unfortunately can't, if someone just writes and, dashes off an application and then just thinks, doesn't matter because I'm saving all my really, really good stuff for the interview, then the interview is most likely not going to happen. So we know what the issues with data are. They are things like interoperability and standards, data protection, security, all these issues. And so and consents and how to work, especially a lot of these challenges, specifically with citizens. How is the data going to be managed? How is personal data going to be managed? How is it going to be anonymized, etc.? All these issues, put them down in the application form, because the application form is the one thing we get to see where we say, yes, this is the kind of company that we really want to work with. They're making sense. So I would say put them down. It's important. Things are obviously in a city going to need to be interoperable now and only increasingly more. So every aspect that's important of data, the more you can address in the application form, the better.
Thank you, Joanna. I've got a question for Mechelen here. If Dimitri, you can answer that. Is there any data available on an existing road congestion in Mechelen?
We have a couple of ANPR cameras within the city. However, they are managed by the police department, and we're working now through the process of the whole GDPR question to see whether we are able to gather some information from their network regarding road congestions, etc. But for the moment, we're not able to provide them as of yet.
I've got an interesting question here from Anu and Tila. If there's a need to involve and engage citizens, for example, to use an app, will the city handle and pay for the related marketing and PR?
Who's taking that question?
Yes, Fons here. I regard that as actually like the investment in certain hardware in a reasonable mode for this proof of concept. So if it is necessary to do some investments in that area inside the challenge, that could be considered by the city. The cost could be by the city.
I would like to add for Bruges as well that we have our own departments working on citizen participation and communication, and that for the first pilot, that was a positive experience in order to reach the target groups as well. So we have some own people available to work on that, so we can play a role in that as well.
Thank you. Gary Barnett is saying that data trusts could address the privacy concerns, allowing authorities to share ANPR data in an anonymized way. Can the universities provide access to students for internship and facilities? Example, 3D printers.
Which countries are we talking about? In the UK, you mean?
Yeah, Gary, could you be a bit more precise, please? I'm not sure we can answer this question, but Berkey, sorry for the pronunciation, would love to know the estimated IT budget of all cities in order to create and propose more specific projects. Is that a question we can answer?
I'm not entirely sure it's going to be super helpful even if we could answer it. The way the application form works is we take each project on its merits, as opposed to, so we can fund that up to 10,000 euros. The actual size of the project is the size of the project. It's not going to be based on the IT department whether we can afford, I'm just not sure how that would affect the application, really. I mean, I see that, there is a relevance here with people who, can Bruges. The questions about can Bruges afford, or Mechelen, are they going to buy electric vehicles? That's one thing. But, what we're looking for is presentations say this pilot stroke minimum viable product stroke proof of concept is going to cost X amount. The 10,000 euros will cost Y amount, and if there's any hardware in it, we anticipate it being Z amount. And at that point, the cities have sufficient information to know, yes, that seems a reasonable budget. Yes, we're getting to what we need at that point. And yes, okay, that fits with a potential hardware budget that we might have for this project. But that's really the information. That's sufficient information for us. And I don't think we want applications built specifically to our full IT budgets, because they cover all kinds of things.
Thank you, Joanna. Aparna is asking Mechelen if they would be open to install CCTV with anonymized data if existing dataset can't be used.
Well, to be honest, Mechelen is already quite fully provided with CCTV cameras and ANPR cameras, but all of them are hosted by the police department. So I don't think we're looking at installing extra cameras specific for the mobility challenges, as that will be another third or fourth camera to be hanged in the same area. So I don't think that would be an option. There would be an option, however, if there is an application or a project or a minimum viable product that would use existing CCTV data, but then we need to address the privacy issue. And I saw a remark from one of the viewers saying, well, with data trust, it is possible to get anonymized data between authorities. But the specific situation in Belgium states that it's very difficult to get data out of the police department networks towards the other authorities. So that's an extra step to take into account above the whole GDPR regulation.
I would also just add to that, yeah, unless the two things, one of which, unless the data is natively GDPR compliant, so i.e. at the point of collection, I think it would be a challenge, as Dimitri said, because of the Belgian rules, but also because data trusts actually take a long time to set up. And I'm not entirely sure that we could set one up in the 3 months between this. That isn't sufficient time to set one up between, the closing of this and the opening of the actual accelerator. And it's really important that, applicants, that SMEs get the data as soon as possible so they can start working on something, because 6 months is not a huge amount of time. And what I think we'd end up doing is spending that whole 6 months setting up a data trust and then not actually having any time to use the data. So while I completely, I've written a lot of papers extolling the virtues of data trusts, what I've also done is written a lot of papers explaining they take a while to set up. And I don't think in this particular situation, we have the time to do that.
Thank you. Gary Barnett has specified this question.
Okay, great.
He said that it was for the UK, and he's a tech startup based in Tottenham, so you must know it because it's 3 miles
yes.
from
No,
Southampton.
we could certainly see if we had any students who want to do an internship. That wouldn't be a problem. We can't force anyone to do internships. We can certainly promote the idea.
Don't force anyone.
3D printers, I'm not sure about. I'd have to look into that.
Okay. Is there any more questions for the cities, or even on the application process in general? Well, Joanna, while I'm scanning through the questions, could you just repeat once more the deadlines, and if they need any information, they can send an email to hello.
Yes. So let me just, I think what's really important here is the deadline is, I think, lunchtime on the 1st of October. I know, I work in academia. I know what the temptation is with deadlines to do it right at the last minute. We are not responsible for any problems with F6S that they might have for the availability of their site. We commit to trying to keep it, make it as available as possible, but we're not fundamentally in control of it. We can't answer questions at the last minute because we may not be able to commit to getting back. We may be doing something else at that point. We commit to a 24-hour turnaround, not a 24-minute turnaround. So I'd really, really, really encourage you to get the application in with, at least a day to spare. But get it in as soon as possible in case there are any issues. You have no idea of the, people come to us and say, well, at the last moment, my dog jumped on my laptop and I didn't know whether it had sent or not. All kinds of things. Don't allow yourself to be that person, would be what I would say. If you do have any questions, email us at hello@smartcityinnovation.eu. You can follow us on Twitter. But I do encourage you to go to the application form if you're interested as soon as possible. You may want to ask more questions specifically about how some part of the application form is relevant specifically to the challenge you're addressing. Give yourself plenty of time to ask those questions.
Thank you, Joanna. So we've got Sipaterop, who's got a question on 1.2 data. When you say which data set, you mean from what is already available from the relevant city? What if we need to use technology to create our own data, therefore not yet available?
Yes, absolutely. We have plenty of projects existing at the moment where data collection was part of the process. Obviously, that's a separate agreement, and that can be, as long as you indicate that in the application, that'll give us plenty of time to ask about it and establish what needs to happen going forward. But yeah, that's absolutely fine. What we don't want to see is any application that just uses collected data and none of the existing open data or existing data of the city. We'd like to see a combination of both at the least.
Thank you, Joanna. I don't see any further question. JDeep's got a question for Judith from Faubourg Numérique, and she will answer you in the chat. I heard someone speaking. Is there anyone who wants to add anything? No, I'll take that as a no. Okay, so if there's no more questions, I think we can close the webinar. Again, if you need anything, please send us an email at hello@smartcityinnovation.eu, and so I'll be receiving the email and rerouting all the emails to the relevant person, so you can have the answer to your question. And thank you for attending the webinar.
We're looking forward to working with you next year.
Indeed, yeah, we're really looking forward to see your applications and the great innovations you've got to offer to the cities. Again, deadline is on the 1st of October, and please do not hesitate to contact us if you need anything. And again, sorry for the delay at the beginning of the stream. It was a bit difficult to set up everything as YouTube has disconnected Hangout. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day and a good weekend. And
thank you very much.
Bye-bye.